COVID-19 webinar. It's actually not a Valentine's Day themed webinar. The theme today is all about internationally educated nurses, and our topic is how internationally educated nurses can help solve the nursing crisis, but really it's honing in on hearing the lived experience of stories from internationally educated nurses in Ontario. And my name is Susan McNeil. I'm an associate director here at RNAO and help to co-host these webinars on related to COVID-19. And this is our agenda for today. So in just a moment, Doris, I hope before your interview, you can provide an introduction to the issues that we're talking about today, sort of a higher level overview of some of the key issues with internationally educated nurses and their progress to being licensed, some of the challenges, some of the solutions that may not be adequate, and some of the activities that RNAO has been doing to expedite some of the real solutions that we need to have happen. And then Raul Pinto is going to moderate a panel discussion with our three panelists, Rahim Kamrudin, Carla Dukusin, Salima Somani, and we're delighted to have the three of them talk about their lived experience of being internationally educated nurses here in Ontario. We'll have an open discussion and Q&A, and then talk about further actions that RNAO is taking to expedite the path to registration in Ontario. So welcome everyone to our webinar today. And Doris, so can I turn it over to you to speak for a few minutes before you go to your interview?
Especially that I have no idea when is the interview, because you were going to the site. Here you go. This is what happens, colleagues, first of all, to all of you. So you know the work of RNAO. When the premier or whoever makes an announcement and we need to respond, everything shifts, much like the work of nurses, right? When you have several patients and one of the patients goes in a more critical state, everything shifts. That's kind of RNAO. The patient of RNAO is the health system, is society. So it is in that context that the work of IENs is hugely important. And in fact, I was speaking about this a couple of minutes ago in another interview, where the issue of the reopening of the province and the dropping of some of the mandates and what was our reaction. And my answer was, until we cannot reopen the health system to a state that they can accommodate all patients, not only patients with COVID, then we cannot just, drop mandates. And I said, and this is where the issue of internationally educated nurses comes to play, because you have a critical role in the capacity of our health system to respond to the needs of the population. And I want to be clear on what do we mean by RNAO supporting IENs, because I don't want anyone that is listening, not the speakers, because they know as well, but others, to get confused. RNAO is not supporting going to other countries and poaching their nurses to come to Canada. In fact, we have a statement against that, in the sense that patients, whether it's in India, Philippines, Europe, or anywhere, right? They require the services of nurses as much as Canadian patients or patients or people living in Canada. In fact, in some of those countries that are less resource countries, they need nurses even more. What we do support and what we are standing for and what we are going to fight all the way with you is for people like me. I am an IN that made Canada our home, that we deserve absolutely the same opportunities than anyone else that graduated here in Canada for their first degree, right? So it's an issue for us of equity. It's an issue for us of justice. It's an issue for us of human rights. And I say it with the utmost seriousness, because RNAO will continue to take this all the way. My colleagues and I have met with numerous internationally educated nurses, ready, absolutely ready, and not only ready, eager, filled with energy, filled with knowledge, expertise, compassion, and passion. And passion is important too, especially in these days in nursing when you need to, kind of go through barricades to get to work in some cities. We need you. We need you at the workplace. We need you whether it's at the hospital site or at the home care site or at the street site, wherever nurses are, and we are in all of those places, and of course also in long-term care. So you are going to hear today from 4 outstanding nurse leaders in the internationally educated nurses group. Raul Pinto, who also is an internationally educated person. You will hear in his accent as you do in mine, will be interviewing you. We all, in one way or another, have experienced what it means to be an outsider, except that I feel very much now as an insider because it's the country that I have lived and being honored to serve for most years in my entire career. But this is to say that we understand you. We know what you went through. We understand you. And some of us, in my case, have comparators to other countries that are much less difficult, I would say, to really reinstate your nursing or register as a nurse as it is here in Canada and in particular in Ontario, and it needs to change. I want, before I say thank you to Raulito for all the podcasts that has done, I want to give a very, very special shout out and thank you to my dear friend and colleague, Dr. Irma Jean Beino. I have asked Irma Jean to take this aspect on simply because the number of emails that I get and calls are immense. Of course, I am dealing with some groups, specifically with the federal government. I am dealing, etc. But Irma Jean is your address. Irma Jean wants to hear your story. She wants to know, and we all want to know, if you are willing to speak with the media. And do not feel obliged. We will take care of you equally if you do or if you don't. Some people are afraid of being identified. Please know that there are means for you not to be identified. And also, of course, Raul is eager to do more and more podcasts because it helps us. It helps us push the agenda. If you can put the other one for a minute before I want to comment on what else I said to the media. So February 3rd was the first meeting that ONA had with the Premier to negotiate the matters in terms of compensation. February 11 was the second. This was this last week. And here is what I commented to the media. And I have not in purpose tweeted about this because I do have huge respect for ONA. I do not want any of us to ever undermine ONA. They're doing all the work they can do. And our colleague, the president of ONA, Catherine Hoy, said that she was taking the $5,000 bonus in good faith. I said to the media just now that to me, that's kind of the salad of the dinner. The main course is still yet to come. $5,000, if you divide it by hours of work of a nurse, is even less than what PSWs got as a top-up. So know that it's insufficient. Is a good gesture, but it's insufficient. And we will continue to look at the repeal of Bill 124 or the exemption of nursing from that bill, top-up of compensation that is substantive, not a gesture of good will, because that should have come, you know when, March 11, 2020, when the pandemic was still a pandemic. We want to decrease workloads, and you cannot decrease workloads if you don't retain nurses. So hence why the top-up of compensation is important, and decrease workloads by fast-tracking IENs. One more piece important for IENs to know is that we are also asking government to bring all the retired nurses that have been 3 years retired, because they still can work in practice in terms of the college regulations, to bring them back with compensation to serve as mentors for any new nurse, whether it's a new graduate, whether it's a nurse that came back to work after 5 years of being off, whether it's an IEN that needs the practice requirement, to bring those retired nurses, because that will help, right? Will help bring resources to the system rather than tax more the current colleagues that are already stretched like an elastic to the limit. So with that, I want to welcome all of you. I see we have a great crowd of 105 people, and it will be growing for sure. I want to ask all of you that are INs to continue to send us signs, whether you are an RN, RPN, or NP, from which country, exactly like there. Take a picture, please. If you can put the previous, take a picture so you know what to send. And for how many years you have been waiting, and that you are eager to practice nursing in Ontario. We are calling this campaign IN Action. And trust me, there is not one thing that RNAO takes that is not resolved. So we are asking that you cover your face in the picture simply so they all look the same. And we know that some of you don't care to show the face to the picture, but so they all signs look the same. And then those of you that want, in addition, to participate in the media, let us know through Imagine. Imagine, please put your email if it's radio, television, or print. And also put, Raulito, if you can, my Twitter. Please follow me. I write a lot about this. Of course, follow RNAO. And feel free to retweet, at the very least retweet, so that the voice gets out loud and clear. And also tweet if you find the possibility to do that. No one should muzzle you to speak about the fact that you're an IN. You ought to stand tall and proud. I want to tell you that not only I am an IN, but our past president, Dr. Angela Cooper-Brathwaite, is an IN. Our president-elect, Claudette Holloway, is an IN. And we have many, many, many leaders in nursing that are INs. So the sky is the limit. I'm not saying that the bedside is not better or the street side. That is where the power of nursing is. But you can dream anything you want, and you deserve to dream, and we will make sure that it happens. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you very much, Doris. And we'll come back to more of our advocacy work later on, and Dr. Imogene Baynock can walk us through some of that as well. So thank you. So I think, Doris, you're going to do your interview and then come back now. So we'll hand things over to Raul Pinto, who will introduce our guest panelists and moderate the discussion. So thank you again, Carla, Salima, and Rahim. And please take it away, Raul.
Thank you so much, Susan, and thank you everyone for being here. We are really, really happy to put together this webinar. It's a pleasure for us to be helping in our way to, to advance the cause of nurses and healthcare workers here in Ontario. Thank you for the introduction, Susan and Dr. Griswold too. My name is Raul Pinto. I'm a journalist. I'm happily infiltrated here at RNAO as a media content producer, and also I'm triply happy to have our panelists today. It took a couple of minutes to try to get them to be here today. It's a really touchy and very difficult issue to talk about, and to try to get people to talk. This is very courageous of them. As we know, as immigrants and people who are here waiting, there's a lot of confusion usually, and we have talked about this with Dr. Griswold as well, about people just telling immigrants, be quiet, don't raise your voice, don't get in trouble. You could lose everything. You can't get back to your country for anything. This fear the people have sometimes related to there have been fighting so much and they could lose everything from 1 minute to another. So that's why it's very important for us to having people like Carla, Salima, and Rahim. Two things before giving them time to talk. First is when we start talking about the international educated nurses here, it was very interesting to see there's so many of them. 20,000 is the rough number that we have, but there's so many of them, and they have different levels of issues here. It's not one problem for everyone. Everyone has a different problem, a different issue, a different struggle. Everyone has been here waiting for 2, 3, 4, 10 years or more to get the chance to work as a nurse here in Canada, in Ontario specifically, right? Because which is it's shocking for all of us. So this tells us that there is a lot of red tape issues here in the middle. Second is very impressive, as always to me, to see how highly qualified these people are. There are people who are studying so hard in their country. Some of them have had the possibility to study here in Canada as well. So they're highly accomplished. They've been working hard, and now we're gonna know some of the stories. And if there's anybody here who wants to ask questions or tell your testimony afterwards when we have the Q&A, we will ask you kindly to be brief, to have a few seconds to tell your story, and so everyone can share the timing here. So I'm going to start with Salima. Salima Somani. I know, Salima, you have to leave before the webinar ends, so I want to share a little bit, very brief here. Mention this. Salima is currently a research manager with the School of Nursing at the University of Northern British Columbia. She managed research and educational projects related to people with dementia, collaborating with various partners, including faculty and researchers from UNBC and the University of Waterloo, Public Health Agency of Canada, Alzheimer's Society, and other relevant partners. That's only a little bit about Salima. I would like you to to tell us a little bit about your story, because the most important to mention today is that Salima is an international educated nurse. Welcome, Salima.
Thank you, Raul. I want to say that I have done my master's in nursing from Aga Khan University in 2010. And I moved to Canada 4 years ago. And I started my application in October 2017. And I got my license in 2019, December 2019. So during this journey, I have submitted documents multiple times, and then like for English proficiency, they have asked me initially to submit document, and then I submitted, and after 2 years, they asked me to submit some recent documents that would say that you are still engaged in an organization where you speak and have competency in English language. So then I submitted, because I was working as a volunteer in Ottawa Hospital and other organization, part-time kind of work. So I submitted my proof of having the competency and proficiency in English language still. So, and then after kind of 1 year of submitting my documents and everything, they asked, like Ontario did not send me any letter or anything like CNO. And then I got an email from Touchstone saying that the CNO has referred my name to them to register for their internationally educated nurses competency assessment programs exam. And like at that time, I was thinking that I am overqualified, and they're asking me to like give this exam, and plus like I have to pay money for that. So I was just thinking that I need to prepare a matrix saying that these are the credit that required, or these are the competencies that required from CNO to work in Canada. So I I can show the credits and competencies that I have achieved in my education and my practice time. So I was just preparing that explanation by keeping my course syllabus, course grades in front of me and writing that these are the courses, these are the competencies, these are the skills that I have done. So while I was preparing this document, meanwhile, I got email from CNO saying that I meet the required educational and practice kind of requirement for, and I'm eligible to give my NCLEX exam. So I was preparing myself for NCLEX exam, and meanwhile they raised this thing that like I submitted letter for my English language proficiency, but they were still confused. And they were thinking that it is kind of appropriate documents that says that like I am competent in English language, and then they forward those documents to registration committee, and then committee said that like I am competent in English, or my English proficiency is up to the mark for them, and then they said that I don't need any other kind of documents, and they are okay with that. So after that, I got my license, Ontario license, in December 2019. So this was my journey. Anything else that you want me to say?
No. Well, based on that, that's great, and we appreciate it. What do you think was your biggest struggle in this time? What was your biggest concern about the process that you were living?
So I was just thinking that like I have to submit, and other applicant as well had to submit everything twice or triple time, like documents, and then like you are asking your organizations to submit a letter again, to submit course grade again, submit other documents. So this is kind of hassle that it is prolonging our duration as well. Like we submitted everything to NNS, and then we submitted everything to CNO with the help of our organization, because they exactly want the institution to send directly to them. So, and then we have to follow up every steps, like things are sent or not, and then follow up with CNO, then follow up with our organization, then follow up with our employer, previous employer for the letter. So that process is kind of long process, and sometimes like same institution and same kind of a program, and they accept one person and they don't accept the other person. It's kind of frustration. I was looking my colleagues, those have done their program from the same organization and not getting kind of a requirement, and they are frustrated to see them frustrated. It's like frustration for us as well. So this was some of the things, like I'm just thinking that they have a kind of source, they have outsourced the agency for initial level of assessment, that is NNIS. So I was just thinking that that is prolonging the time duration. So if one agency is looking at, and then for some of the things that make everybody's life easy is like people are coming from various countries, people are coming from various institutions. So some of the institutions are quality institutions and some may not be. So while looking the context of the programs, looking the context of the institution, that makes life easy for the organization, those who are certifying us as a registered nurse. So I'm just thinking that like somebody is getting, I think many of these candidates are getting a report that are not satisfying them, that whatever the qualification they have, whatever the credits they have done is not accepted by NNAS. So I'm just thinking that like some people are overqualified, but still they don't accept that. I don't understand. Some people are up to the mark qualified and they are accepting that. So we don't understand, because NNAS don't allow us to ask questions to them or clarify things. So they, if we write something to them to clarify, they say, this is not the time to clarify us. You can contact with your provincial level body for that. So here, like it's frustration for the people, those who are coming with kind of overqualified programs or things like that. So it is frustrating for me as well.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Salima. I would like to ask Dr. Irma Jean Bachok, you have been receiving the emails and messages from internationally educated nurses. You have been dealing with them. What have you seen in this time? What have you feel it is the most common feeling of internationally educated nurses right now? I'm sorry, Dr. Imagine?
Yeah. Yes,
yes.
I'm here. Thank you. I
Sorry.
was just unmuting. I just put something in the chat in relation to NNAS that Salima spoke about. And maybe I'll just mention that for a second. NNAS is the National Nursing Assessment Service. Every IEN who comes to Canada is required to submit their documentation to NNAS prior to any regulatory body opening a file for them. And in Ontario, the NNAS is primarily looking at education program comparability. And the NNAS will send back to the regulatory body is the program comparable, somewhat comparable, or not comparable. And this is what Salima is saying. I myself worked at the Aga Khan University, and it is a program built after Canadian education programs. And we know of nurses like Salima who've had their education identified as comparable or somewhat comparable, and others who've identified it as not comparable. So there is inconsistency. And I guess in the calls and contacts I've had and working with the IEN group from Pakistan, the three big issues are the lack of clarity and the confusion. And of course, that leads to frustration, it leads to mistakes being made, and it leads to IENs not really knowing if they're being treated fairly or not. The second big problem that can happen then is time. It takes an inordinate amount of time going back and forth, not sure what's happened to your documents, having to clarify something because it wasn't clear on the request forms. And then lastly is the cost, which again, Salima alluded to. Every one of the 8 steps to become registered in Ontario usually costs money in some way, shape, or form. Either you pay a fee to write an exam, you pay a fee to submit a document for assessment, you pay a fee to get a transcript, you pay a fee to have your documents translated. So these really result in a lot of frustration. And I myself am in awe of the IENs for their ability to persist and to really rise above anger and frustration and throwing in the towel, as we say, and keep focusing on the goal. So kudos to all the IENs.
Thank you very much. And we also receiving a lot of good questions. And I'm going to remind you that we're going to have some time of Q&A later. Thank you everyone for participating as well. So I would like to turn to Rahim. Rahim is here as well. He is from Pakistan, from Karachi, Pakistan. He said he did his bachelor's science in nursing from Karachi, Pakistan, and worked also at the Aga Khan University Hospital for 4 years. Then he moved to Middle East, to Dubai, and worked for 2.5 years as a registered nurse. And then he opted for higher education and moved to Canada to pursue his master's degree in nursing. He did his master's in nursing with leadership stream from the University of Alberta in 2020. He's also here with us, and well, I would like to say hello, Rahim, and you have the time to tell us about your story trying to get registered here.
Thank you, Raul, for a great introduction of mine, and I would like to thank Ms. Salima because she is one of my mentors as well as my teacher. I remember my day one class when she gave us the teaching of CPR and BLS. So it's been a quite long journey, and I think we are in the same foot in this country, in Canada. So yeah, as an internationally educated nurses, I did my bachelor's from Aga Khan University. That was 2011. Then I moved to Middle East. I worked over 2.5 years over there, and then I got opportunity for higher education. So I came to Alberta. Is my voice clear for everyone? Okay. So I did my master's from University of Alberta, and I graduated in 2020. At that time, peak of COVID hit. So for me, uh, I just came like little late to join my program because there were several issues with my study visa. So I was not completely prepared that how to go with the nursing licensure process. So for me to figure it out, what was the process for licensure in Canada, it took me almost 3 months just to understand what is NNAS. Because we are, as an IN who is enrolled in master's program, was not sure what the process for licensure is in Canada. And with more understanding of Canadian healthcare system and my particular interest in licensure process, it became my stepping stone project. So it helped me a lot to understand what real issues are being faced by IN. So my initial plan was to get my license in Alberta. However, my research came to the conclusion that it would take almost 4 years for an IEN to get registered in the province, and it cost around $10,000. So which was a huge cost. So I thought it would be wise to get the license in Ontario, which almost cost half of the time and half of the cost. Because as an internationally educated nurse who has come to Canada is already out of money because you are paying out of your pocket for your education, for your living expense. And it's very difficult to navigate the licensure process. So each thing comes with the cost and the time. I'm one of the luckiest one who got his license within 2 years. But again, there were a lot many hiccups during that process. So usually the NNS website at that point in time used to say that it takes like 12 weeks, 4 to 8 weeks to process your documents. But for me, it took like 12 to 16 weeks just to process. And that time does not include your documents to reach to NNS because everything is mailed to them rather than emailed to them. So we live in 21st century, right? With just one click, everything could be resolved, right? But you need a hard copy. And for example, I had a conversation with one of their evaluator regarding my course grade. So she said that your course grade is like 400 pages. We need to review each and every page, and it takes a lot of time. So I said that, okay, it's fair enough to understand that, but I mean, you should have more processes where you can identify what type of education I got, because people are coming from the same institute or from the same country. You should have a format to assess them quickly and speedily, uh, whatever. So it took almost a year for me to get my NNS report. And after getting my NNS report, I applied to CNO. I got my NCLEX clear in April. However, I got my license in December of 2020, almost at the end of the year. So the reason was that during that time period, CNO systems were hacked and pandemic was on peak, so they were out of the work. So there were many challenges, and they requested me one of my documents from a hospital in Dubai. So at that time, it was not possible to send them a hard copy. And then they finally said that it could be mailed. So it resolved everything because at the peak of pandemic, every flights were closed. So I think they have adjusted over the time, but they should look into their system more, that how they can improve the process of licensure for IENs. Moreover, clear guidelines are not mentioned anywhere. So you have to struggle a lot to understand how to process your NNS application and how to process your CNO things and how to take follow-up on them. So like, I remember I sent my English language document and they said that they are in mail. And once they reach in the mail, it takes several days, like 10 to 15 days or 2 business weeks, just to acknowledge that mail, which is in their part. So, you know, with emails, things could have been expedited, but with going with hard copy, it's very difficult. So these were some of my challenges during my licensure process. And moreover, the problem for IN does not end over there. As soon as you become an IN, you have your nursing license, you are treated as second or third degree RN. You know, you are not fairly treated for your international experience. You are not given any credit for your international experience. If it's 10 years or 5 years, your experience is not counted based on the seniority or whatever, I don't know. So it is really frustrating for internationally educated nurse to enter into a healthcare system where they are asked, why not you come and start working with us as an HCA, and then once you gain Canadian experience, we will acknowledge you as an RN. Though you have proved your proficiency while giving an NCLEX, why don't you ask your new graduates to do that? Start working on an HCA and then become an RN, right? Yet an IEN is a full-fledged nurse who has practiced not in his country. He has proven his skill set through NCLEX exam, through finding the equivalency of the document. So a person who is going through so much hardship is being treated unfairly in this system. So it's really frustrating experience to see biases towards IEN. And now, if they ask that healthcare system could be made better with IN, so do you think this is the only option? It's very difficult to see that.
Thank you, Rahim. And I would like to ask you, many people in Canada just decide to leave everything, you know, to just quit. What kept you going in lieu of all the frustration that you were feeling?
Well, you know, as a student doing masters in nursing, I went to apply for HCA, and they told me that no, you are overqualified for that position. So it made me so frustrated. So I said that I would become an RN. I don't want any position of HCA, you know. You are just insulting my skill set and my education, which I had gotten over the period of time. So I have seen personally, and it feels so bad that people who are doing PhD, they are doctorate in their field, and then they are being said that your education is not supported on bachelor's level or diploma level, and we don't recognize you. And you are doing PhD from like University of Toronto, University of Alberta. These are the top schools. What kind of bureaucracy is this, that your education credentials are acknowledged for master's and PhD program, and yet your credentials are of no use for working as an RN? I don't know. This is the reality. You should ask that what kind of work they have done during their studies while doing their master's and PhD program. And I think people would be ashamed. Like working on dollar stores, working in, I don't know, I don't want to name it. It feels, I feel so much pain for them and for me, because I've been through this and it's a real challenge. And I say, though the journey is a little long, but if you step fast, it is ultimately rewarding once you work as a registered nurse, because your passion is to help others and to tend care for sick, because that was your initial goal, right? Yeah, but integration into a country like Canada as a nurse for an IEN, coming from any background, it's not easy. It's very difficult.
Thank you once again, Rahim. And Dr. Vajnog, Dr. McNeil here, if you want to comment on this case specifically, what do you think about Rahim's testimony? You're in mute.
Yeah,
Dr.
a couple of things. First, I think some of the points that Rahim made absolutely reinforce the issue of cost, the issue of confusion, and then unnecessary time. While it took you 2 years, it probably could have taken 6 months. I do also think that it would be really important for all those organizations, as Rahim was mentioning, and Salima as well, to get together in terms of how they put forth this information. So it's very clear. A number of us here in Canada have looked at the forms for every step of the way, and they're formidable. And when you think, as you said, Rahim, when you come to this country and you're not used to these kinds of documents, these forms can really be a challenge and really turn you off. So I guess I do wonder how many internationally educated nurses are out there who may not even start the process because of these challenges right up front. So again, I say, for those of you who do, I think it's really a testimony to the kind of skill and endurance you have, and the fact that you will make phenomenal nurses.
I would like to add one more comment in this. The thing is that I did my master's in nursing in Alberta, right? And my first preference was to work in Alberta. However, because the licensure process in Alberta is so tough, I opted to come to Ontario. So that includes, again, a cost to travel from one province to another province. And of course, most of the internationally educated nurses don't come as a single person, they come as a family unit, right? So you need to see for your spouse too, right? And it's a huge cost to travel from one province to another province, establish yourself, find an accommodation, to understand the city, to understand the transit system. These are some other issues which happens to person which are secondary to what the real problem was, which is getting a nursing license. Moreover, if you want to move out, like for example, if I want to move out from Ontario to Alberta or any other province, the process is so difficult for IEN, I think it screws you up, trust me. Like Ms. Salima was sharing her experience, that how she moved from Ontario to northern BC, right? And there was acute shortage of nurses. She is working as a nurse in Ontario. She has proven her capacity as a nurse. Yet she has to file all the documentation again. It's such a, I totally understand that each province healthcare system is regulated by each provincial regulatory body, but each regulatory body does not speak with one another. My credentials, which are accepted in Ontario, are not accepted in Alberta. Why? So the education standard in Ontario is different than education standard in Alberta, or the nurse who put IV cannula in the vein in Ontario puts the IV cannula in an artery. What kind of difference is this? I mean, at the end of the day, practices remain same, right? You should have much more standards, which does make sense for an IEN or for any nurse who wants to move from one province to another. And moreover, like I did my research on part of IENs for Alberta. So even if you get your nursing license in Alberta, you have to do some graduate hours, 300 hours graduate hours, and an IEN to prove your competency to your employer so that Canada can provide you a full license. You don't do that for fresh graduates. Those who have never practiced a single day independently in a healthcare setting, yet you challenge, you ask to a nurse who has maybe 5 years, 10 years of experience to provide 300 more hours as a graduate nurse and then applying for a full license to practice. So either your standards to assess a nurse is different, I'm not sure. At the policy table, people who evaluate the process for IN should think thoroughly that what they want to should create a framework that is uniform throughout the country, not in a province. And they should come up with a solution. It's a high time.
Thank you so much for your intervention, Rahim. And we're gonna move to our third guest today. She's Carla Tukusin. Carla, are you here? Can you hear us?
Hi, I'm here.
Excellent, Carla, welcome. Carla is from the glorious country of Philippines, and she has been working as an RN in her country for 4 years, and she has been in Canada for more than 3 years now. This is interesting because she's currently working as a caregiver for an elderly patient, and she is licensed as an RN and as an RPN here in Ontario. But she can't practice because her PR application is currently in process, which is a different case, right? Carla, well, first of all, welcome. Thank you so very much for being here. And you have some time to tell us your story.
Oh, thank you for having me. Mine is a different story from Salima and Rahim. So I came here as a caregiver in 2018. And no, it's the easiest, it's the fastest way to enter the country. So I came as a caregiver, even if I am an RN in my home country. So I did my NNAS in 2019. And then the results came and they said that I am somewhat comparable with RPN and not comparable with RN. So in the CNO process, they told me that I have to either go back to school or to do OSCE, to do a touchstone. So, and then with the language proficiency, I heard that it takes a while. Some of my friends, it took them a year until they met the language proficiency. So I just took the IELTS so I can lessen the waiting time. And then with the education, while I was, it was so hard to get a schedule from Touchstone because they only ask for few people for every time they do the OSCE. So while waiting for that, I processed my RN in New York so I can meet the registration requirement because I didn't want to waste time. And then at the same time, CNO said that they consider I can meet the education requirement if I have a license with in the US or in Australia for as long as I take the NCLEX. So luckily I have a license in New York and I send it to CNO and then they met my registration and they met my education requirement. Fast forward, I have met everything with my RPN and with my RN last year. However, it was hard for me to get the license because my PR it haven't been processed yet. For me to, you need the permanent residency to start practicing as a nurse here in Canada, and I don't have that. So I created this group and have met with 26 other people in the same situation as me. And we have contacted a lot of people. And luckily, we were able to connect with Dr. Doris, and she's helping us with Dr. Irma Jean to talk to the feds. We have heard updates now in our PR applications. Hopefully, we get good news.
And they already have a job. And
yes.
some of them have more than one job waiting.
Yes, with job offers. We have met
Stop
with different
doing interviews. We cannot do so many
hospitals.
references.
Yes. Yes. The biggest hurdle that I faced with CNO is the waiting time, and also with the hefty fees. you know, the salary of a caregiver is not much. So you have to pay for the language proficiency. I went home to update my safe practice because I haven't practiced in a while. So that also costs money. And when I sent the documents to the College of Nurses of Ontario, it took them 7 months to meet the safe practice requirement. So it's very lengthy. And another is that I heard from my friends that it took them a year or more than a year until they receive an update with their language proficiency. So the lengthy waiting time is very, very frustrating. And yeah, another hurdle that we are facing right now is the immigration process. And we hope that hopefully in the future we get news, and then we can start practicing as RNs and RPNs in Ontario. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carla. Dr. Doris Greenspoon. I'm calling you Dr. Doris because everybody's doing that now. That's how we do it in Spanish too. I would call these people the highly international educated nurses because it's impressive. It's admirable to see how much they have fought. Well, I would like to hear your take on this, Doctor.
So I need to tell you that I'm not surprised because I lived it. I don't want to take air on this, but I lived it. I was one of those nurses that actually challenged the college pretty publicly. So I lived it, right? I know, and this is many, many decades ago. My view is that it only has gotten worse. Has gotten worse because the number of people wanting to live in our beautiful country are more. This is, you know, take the hiccup of the mess now that we are having, which shall pass, I hope. But this is a country that everybody dreams to live at, right? Whether because it's more safe, it's more, you know, except of the weather, as some of us say, the rest, and now the so-called trackers that is not trackers as we know now. It's just a magnificent country, right? A country you can go at night, women can walk, and you can raise a family, and you can have a decent compensation and not struggle. So people want to live here. So this is why we have more and more and more nurses coming here wanting to practice. And what is so astonishing to my colleagues at RNAO and to the INs themselves and to nurses overall is that we have a mega crisis of human resources. We're desperate, we say, desperate, that we need more people to be able to care for Ontarians with expertise, with passion. And I will speak in a minute about the courage, because this is where the INs, I think, can put, quite frankly, so many in the small pocket, as we say in Spanish. But with the expertise and passion that new graduates in Canada have and that INs have. And yet we don't, you know, we don't allow them to share that expertise. And let me say why the piece of courage is so important. I heard a bit Salima before I went into the interview, and now Carla, and I don't know if Rahim already spoke or not, but I'm sure he too. The courage that it takes for you guys to be speaking now publicly, the courage that it takes for you to, quite frankly, put up with the system that is so slow and so expensive. That courage is what we need in the practice setting. You know, practice settings are not always the easiest. The interview just now was about the violence in practice settings because of everything that is going on. And you guys come with that courage in loads already. just by moving from one country to another, guys. Some of you left countries that were probably not the safest. I know colleagues that have left countries that are not the safest. But even if you left a country that is safe and you packed, like I did, like Raul did, not in nursing, but he did, and pack and move to another country completely, you know, foreign to you, sometimes with an accent. In my case, when I moved to the US, people couldn't understand what I was talking. Today, they can do a bit better with that, but trust me, they couldn't understand. Like the courage that that takes. We need you at work, right? We need that dose of courage and expertise and compassion that you guys brought to come here. We need that at work. So, thank you. It's all I can say, Raulito. I say thank you to my colleagues for putting up with that. I asked Carla one day, and Carla can attest that I did. And I asked also the gentleman that you interviewed, Raul, when we were doing a podcast. Yeah, I didn't know if, well, it was a podcast, so I guess, yes, it can be public. I honestly said at one point, why don't you just pack and go to the US? They will process you like this, because they processed me like that. Before I came to Canada, I went to the US. I was processed in no time, and that's a history in itself, not just processed in no time, promoted in no time, not having any permanent residence in the US, and promoted to different positions because of the expertise and the proven knowledge. And Carla said to me, and Carla, I will repeat it because it was just beautiful. You said, but Dr. Doris, and yes, I like the Dr. Doris, not Dr. Greenwood, but the Dr. Doris, yes, because it reminds me of Latin America. But Dr. Doris, we are very family oriented, you said. And here I have some family. I want to stay here. And our colleague said in the interview with you, Raul, I was there. My wife is here. I want to be here. So, you know, you could take the easy way and say, you know what, enough is enough. And I go to the US and I practice there. And trust me, you will have a magnificent career. I say it with sadness. I want you to have a magnificent, we want you. Irma Jean, Raul, me, Susan, everybody at RNAO, and the 48,000 plus nurses that we represent. We want you to have a magnificent career here, and we will push until you do. Not only with the issue of the college, guys, and not only with the issue of the feds, but also with workplaces. If we will start to see that people like Rahim, that people like Salima, that people like Carla and others, either because the color of their skin or the accent that comes out of our mouth, are not enabled to progress the way you want and deserve, of course, connected with your capacity, we are going to push again. And we did that with the Black Nurses Task Force report, right? Whether newcomer or always here, born here, it cannot be that we can have what I call, and my colleagues are calling systemic discrimination and racism, not because of color of skin, not because of accent that comes from our mouth, not because of religion, sexual orientation, nothing. People deserve to be treated with the respect and opportunities that their expertise demands. If you're not an expert, I get it. You need to get the expertise and we will help you gain the expertise. But if you have the expertise and the capacity, we will push all the way, not only on the issue of registration, going forward on issues of equal opportunities connected to your capacity, period, end of story. That's it. So that's my comment, Raulito. And I'm sure Irma Jean also would like, Dr. Irma Jean would like to also share thoughts.
Yes,
and I would like to also hear people like Susan, you know, people like Susan, people that are less directly involved on this. I would very much like to hear my colleagues that are less immersed in it.
Thank you so much. And we
Raulito,
will-
at the end.
Yes.
And you, Raulito, at the end. I need to tell you about this Raulito. His name is Raul, but in Chilean, we always are ito to everything. Everyone we love is Raulito. So get used, Carlita and Salimita and Rahimita, because that's the way I will be calling you. But the reality is this. Raul said to me one day, and this was about Bill 124, and my colleagues will just love it. He called me, says, can you imagine we move this? This was, I think, his second week at RNAO. I can't believe it. I may be part of something that actually makes change happen. Raulito, we are making change happen.
Yes, thank you very much. And this is very meaningful too, to be here today, hearing you. Before I want to pass to Susan for, well, to work in the Q&A, and also, of course, giving us her take on these cases. I know Salima has been waiting for saying something. Salima, you have a couple of minutes, please.
Thank you. I have 3 small points that I can connect with the previous participants' statements. One thing is that, like, journey is not finished here when we get our license. The challenge still is there to be a part of the system. And I said that, like, when I got my Ontario license, at that time I was applying for different positions. Like, at that time I was ready to take any of the RN role, long-term care, emergency medicine, whatever. So I applied at different organizations for different positions. And then one day I got a call from a long-term care. They were shortlisting the participants, and they said that I have mentioned in my resume that I have experience working as a volunteer in Ottawa Hospital. So they misunderstood that I work as an RN over there because I got my license now. How could I work as an RN? So because of that misunderstanding, they shortlisted me. Like, their concern was, if you have a previous experience working in Canada as a RN, we can give you a job. So that's what is my concern. Like, initially you got your license, how would it be possible to get a experience working in Ontario? So that is also one challenge that I can think that, like Rahim was mentioning about it. Like, and the other thing is that evaluation system of, like, our education evaluation system that NNAS is doing. Like Rahim mentioned that to going through the 40-pager curriculum or syllabus is difficult for the evaluator. I agree with them. But my concern is, you have thousands of applications from the same institution, the same program of undergraduate. Can't you verify that organization's program and make your life easy? Like, once you have evaluated the program and you are getting the letter from the institution that this is a graduate of our school, then like, you straight away say that this qualifies or not qualifies.
100% with you, Salima, and it's something I have addressed. Some of the universities that I know personally, because I have worked in other countries, I kind of go, so no, this is more serious than serious.
Yeah, so the system side, I would like to say one thing is, like, I have seen 2 same graduates from the same university, the same course, and after the courses, the same years of experience working in a clinical setting, one got, like, meeting the criteria, other got not meeting the criteria. So that's how the other one is in frustration.
Send them to us, please, because we can profile their stories with or without names. Those are the things we need. Those are the things.
Right, I will ask them to. The third thing that I can find it here is listening to the others' conversation is about language proficiency. Once a person is submitting you the language proficiency thing, initially it is acceptable. After 2 years living in Canada, then you again ask them for proficiency. Like, if that person is working as a PSW in Canada, working as a caregiver in Canada, so do you think that without having the language proficiency, they are continuing their job in Canada? So, like, then they are extending your time of application by asking the evidence and submitting the document. It takes time. So that is one more thing that system level can improve it.
Now, they did change now a bit, the issue of language, and that was following a push again, right? It happened all of a sudden like this. Yeah. So we will keep pushing, but we will push at a much faster speed, much more vocal and much more publicly, and more to come on that. But this is, you are seeing the campaign now, the letters to the college we have sent, we have asked for meetings. We did meet, just so you know, with the Fairness Commissioner. We are meeting with the Human Rights Commissioner, and we will keep going all the way. This is not going away, and your stories and your voices only help us push. So please, at the end, we will review again all the pieces that homework we want you to do.
Thank
Great.
you, Susan.
Thank you so much, Raul. So the chat box has been really busy with lots of great comments and some questions that have already actually been answered, and some comments that, so Doris, I was really happy to hear you talk about the structural racism, which I think is probably the foundation of so much of the problem here. So you did, that was something that Lynn had asked about, so thank you. And then Salima, you were just talking about—
I want to be clear one thing, Susan.
Yes.
When we speak racism, and someone actually educated me the other day about that, it is not only color of skin, it is accents, like Salima has it's accents, it's religion, it's all of the aspects that are preventing, people to advance because of their capacity versus how they look, how they sound, or And the report on the Black Nurses Task Force should be very, very, very helpful to us. Because imagine if those nurses with good accents and with being educated here are suffering that level of systemic racism and discrimination, just imagine others coming from abroad.
Thank you for that clarification, Doris. So there are a couple of questions that I'm thinking might be good to ask the panelists to respond to. And Salima, maybe you can go early on with your response, because I know that you do need to leave. But one question was from Alexis about any resources that you utilized that really helped you. Like, could any of you talk about something that really helped you through the process? And maybe a question from one of the other participants that was looking at the ESL assessment, if there are any other tips on the experience with that and how to progress. So if you have an answer to either of those questions. So about the ESL assessment, I don't know if that's applicable to everyone. Or also the resources.
But Susan, with the new roles for the ESL, because it's very different than what it was before.
Sure, thank you. So Salima, maybe you can go first, because I know you have to leave and I see your hand up, so please go ahead.
Yeah, so for kind of English language proficiency, what I did, like I exempt from that, because I did my studies in English from my primary to like university level, and then my university professor provided a letter, and then I had a publication in English, so that was a peer-reviewed journal. So I mentioned about those things, and then my supervisor wrote a letter that like mode of communication during my work, during my studies was in English. So that's how it helped me in a way. Like still after 2 years, they asked me to submit some other documents. Then I submitted from my from Canada, some of the supervisors in my voluntary role. So I asked them to write a letter, and I asked them to specifically mention that my like speaking, my writing skills, and my kind of communicating skills all in a 3-column, like what kind of activity I'm doing, and then they can mark that is up to the mark, and then my participation in kind of conversation. So those kind of things I submitted, and I got an exemption for the language. And then after that, I heard from my colleagues that they introduced kind of a table or a format that your supervisor can write in that, saying that 3 areas are competent in terms of English proficiency.
Thank you, Salima. So one tip I'm hearing is maybe getting those letters of support ready and making them extremely explicit, so it's easy for the reviewers to find what they need right away. So thank you for that. Rahim, maybe we'll go to you next if you have any other tips that might have helped you.
For English language, I asked Ms. Salima what was her experience. I remember that, and she gave me the same thing. So I would suggest that because I was doing my master's, so it was easy for me to ask my current professor to write a letter for me. And there is a format also available on CNO website that what exactly they want to look in each of the skills. But more recently, they are changing how they assess the English language. So my tip to all those who are in the process or who wants to do the process is, I would just tell them to keep updated on what the Nursing Council is doing for internationally educated nurses, because things could change very rapidly and things can't change in ages. So one need to be one need to be on top of what is going in and around in the Nursing Council. That would really help.
So if I may add to that a couple of things, very different the requirements now. So that's number one. And Irmajin can post them for you in the chat. It's not the exam and all of those things that were before. Number two, I am aware of people that have challenged that, because in the exam you required before a 9 out of 10, which quite frankly, I can tell you many people born in Canada that can speak less good than the three that already spoke. Yes, I say that. I'm not criticizing, that's the reality. In terms of vocabulary, understanding, etc. Number three, those that challenged it succeeded. So that's important too. So if you get a hurdle on language proficiency, I would ask that you call it Majin or I. When I speak with people that call me, I speak in English. And if I can understand them, that's all I need. A patient does too. You know what I mean? Most of us that were internationally educated, unless we came from English-speaking countries, right? And even then, are proficient in reading and writing, because it's required in all the universities abroad, and the degree by which it's required is much higher than here. So we are absolutely outstanding writers from the moment we go to school, basically. And that goes for all the countries, including now China, that they're starting from very, very early age. The issue is the accents, right? But you know what I mean? If I can understand you and you can understand me, the patients can. Sometimes we cannot understand the patient. That's a different story, right? But they can understand us. And so I think that there is more to it also, colleagues, in relationship to language proficiency. There is more to it, and I would say that the issue of discrimination is there too. So we need to shape that, because enough is enough. Enough is enough. This is a country of multiple cultures, multiple accents, multiple everything, and we are all in tune with time to understand the other, whether it's a patient or whether it's a nurse. As long as you can communicate effectively, and another health professional or a patient can understand well what you are communicating, I think that that's the test. I have many stories I can tell you about my accent in the US when I went to the UX. No one could understand. I hardly could understand myself. In any case, and they like this treated me, like this, because I was an outstanding clinician, right? So let's make sure that we don't confuse language proficiency with discrimination. Simple as that. I'm not going to say systemic racism, because it's the broader term, right? Because it depends from where you come, what the accents are, etc. And some people will have accents forever. Some of us don't want to change the accent. That's me, right? It's a trademark. So as long as you are an effective communicator, that's what we are talking. Writing, because you need to write eligible. Reading, because you need to understand what's going on the charts, right? It's not about reading, I don't know, a novel. And speaking, that you can communicate effectively with patients with you, with team members, etc. And that goes, by the way, for everybody. And that's where I think there is discrimination. Imagine is preview, and I'm not going to comment of emails that we get of people upset for our positions or whatever. Some of them you hardly can understand what they're saying, and they're born here. So I'm not going to say they and we and whatever. It's we and we and we, because you are all in Canada. And the we and we and we needs to open doors to have you to care for patients because they need us desperately, and they need you desperately.
Great, thank you. Carla, I wanted to give you a chance to see if you had anything more to add about the issue of language or accent or proficiency, but also that second question about any resources that you found particularly helpful in your journey.
With me, we have a support group for Filipino internationally educated nurses. There's 14,000 internationally educated nurses who joined that. So if you don't know anything like what are the forms that should be needed, what should I do when I go home to my country, what are the documents that needed to be sent to CNO, and everyone is pitching in, and they're very helpful. They give information, so it really helped me a lot. I met friends there. I met people who helped me there. Heck, I even found the 26 people there. So it's great to have a network of people who you know who can help you out.
Great, thank you. The social support. So Salima, let's go to you, and then Rahim. I saw you had your hand up and then it went down. So maybe we'll hear from Salima and then go back to you, Rahim. And so go ahead, Salima.
So I would say the same thing as Carla mentioned, that I had a community group and a group of from our previous institution. So Aga Khan University's group, where like every individual is there to support those who have already got their license. So I connected to those experienced people. I called them for the support. I called them for the guidance. So those were kind of things. I didn't use any of the courses or any of the things. I didn't attend any of the English language course or nursing courses or anything, like, because I found that the things that are there in my kind of qualification list is more than enough. So I didn't do anything in that because I was confident, because whatever they were writing that need to be done in their need assessment, I had already did double or triple courses for that, like leadership, ethics, research. I had more than the requirement. So I was just thinking that I need kind of a support from my people. So that's what I got from my community, my institution. So that was a great help for me.
That's beautiful, Salima.
Thank you. And Rahim, do you have anything else you'd like to say about that?
Yes, I have a couple of points. If it could go to the policymakers or people who are higher up in the ladder, and if they can influence people to think in this direction, it would be really helpful. So I remember one of the example of one of my professor. She was from Australia. She was born and brought up in Australia. Then she moved to Canada and she was working as a professor. Even that person has to write English language exam. So they were such policies of Karna so stringent that a person who is born in an English country where the language is English, they have to prove themselves. So why not this English language proficiency is applied for all internationally graduate, for all nurses, those who are studying in Canada, if this is the requirement. So there should be, like, if you are treating a nurse as a nurse, so standard for IEN should be same as standards for a nurse who is working, living, and studying in Canada. There shouldn't be any kind of discrimination to an extent. It's not just that I'm coming from Pakistan that I felt that. Imagine a person who is coming from England, whose mother tongue is English, or who's coming from Australia, whose mother tongue is English, and you ask them to write a standardized English test to prove their competency that they can speak and read and write in English, when the person, I think he was born and brought up in that environment. There should be second thing in addition to that, I would like to add, they should study other countries' example. So for, like, I have a few of my friends who are who got their licenses as international educated nurses in UK. So they have their OET test. So they just lower that score from 7 to 6.5 so that could make it easier for INs to get integrated in the system. Or just like in Australia, where you can attempt twice a test, and if you improve on that particular score, that could be accepted as an acceptable. And once you have achieved that score, it remains throughout your life, not just like that particular score is valid for certain period of time. And your application is lingering because there is a COVID or there is another pandemic and we are shut down and we cannot work. I remember I paid like $65 fees for a police clearance certificate, which is valid for 6 months. And my application just went 7th month. And I asked that, I didn't practice anything. So should I pay another $65 for the police certificate? And they said, yes, we can't do anything. If you want to get your license, you need to pay it again. I said, okay. so I don't know. They think money comes from sky for internationally educated nurses that you don't have to pay out of your pocket.
So Rahim, I will say again that either is utter incompetence or discrimination, period, the issue of the English. Because a person from Australia or from the UK or from Ireland is an issue of accent. It's not an issue of English. So that is either the process is incompetent, because then we should not accept patients from those countries because we will not understand what they're telling us. I mean, seriously, right? Or it's discrimination. And I will say it's the latter. I will say publicly it's the latter. Because if it's not discrimination, processes should have been put in place long ago to fix this. So that's number one. Number two, I don't want to forget that March 3rd, there is the CNO Council meeting. The issue of IENs will be, I am hopeful, discussed at that meeting. You should all, everybody that can, should attend as observers. Both Raul, so we don't miss the boat, and Irmajin will send you the link of how you register as observers. You, of course, cannot speak, nor can we, and I will attend too, and so will our team at RNAO. We need to be there to hear the discussion. I'm not going to comment more, and this is not going to go away until it's fixed. We are not saying at RNAO, we are not expecting, nor do we want at RNAO, that people be registered as nurses, whether at NRPN or NP, without a process. We don't. We know that bad apples can come. And what I mean by bad apples is people that say, I'm a nurse and they're not a nurse, right? I mean, that happens even here. Let me tell you, we can tell you stories at RNAO, thankfully not many, where people have shown up to show us that they're nurses and they're not. And you have seen it in the media, etc. That can happen, but those are the exceptions. So yes, we want process, but we want a fair, speedy, equitable process, whether you are from another country or not, and whichever country. And it cannot be this amount of time, and the in-between communications need to be a lot faster. I would dare to say that out of the 20,000, maybe some names are repeats, etc., and it's more than 20,000, we know now. But I would dare to say that likely 14,000 meet the requirement to be a nurse. I cannot think otherwise because I know INs. I know INs and I have been an IN and at the very least. And just picture if those 14,000 would be at the bedside or at the street side or at the home care side that needs nurses desperately, or at the school side as faculty, or at the whatever side, in all sectors and settings. We need that, and we need to fasten it, because if not, the solutions that government and others that see opportunities will create will be worse for patients. It will be roles that are not nurses, that are mini helper of the PSW, mini, the nurse that can do X, B, C, which will not be called nurses. And we got to put a stop to it. So I think like what you see in Ottawa and you saw in Windsor, there are many agendas when complex issues happen. I think the IN issue is way more complex than what we are talking now. There might be, and we are going to get to the bottom of it, there might be those, whether agencies or individuals, that are benefiting from this delay in tactics. And I'm not saying the college, I'm saying others, you know, that can create new roles, can create new initiatives. We don't know, but one thing we know is RNAO is going to get to the bottom of it, and you are going to get your place in the system as we needed it a long time ago. So March 3rd, remember that. I don't know the time of the council meeting, but Imagine will be putting that in the website, and we will tweet about that, and we urge you to attend.
Great, thank you, Doris. And I do want to draw people's attention, if they're not already aware, that the chat box has lots of really great suggestions, some ideas, some other resources. So take a look at that for the remaining 30 minutes of this webinar. And also just to reassure you that we are keeping the chat box so that any of our future work, we can keep in mind some of your great suggestions and the resources that you're mentioning there. So there were a couple of people that have been very active in the chat box. So I did want to give them an opportunity. Stepaline, you had your hand up a little while ago. And so I wanted to hear from you, and I see that there's quite a lot of chatter about CARE International. So maybe someone wants to speak about CARE. Rahim, I see that you've got your hand up as well. I'm just wondering, can we go to Stepaline first, because she had her hand up for a little while ago.
Just a comment, Susan,
yeah.
about the Twitter. I would suggest that you all join Twitter, not to tweet necessarily. I think you need to be smart what you tweet, but follow Twitter to at least hear the conversation. More and more we're using hashtag IN. So for those of you that feel that you are inclined to speak, please be smart how you speak. Don't ever disclose where you're working. Don't ever disclose patients, etc. But issues you can. But I understand, and we understand that many of you are, for the reasons that Raulito said at the beginning, concerned, if not afraid, concerned of tweeting, because will it affect your work or not? Good places will not make your work affect, and Carla already knows that because of the many interviews that she's having both in media and with employers, but some places would. So I need to be, you know, fair with you, but at the very least follow so you see what the conversation is, right? And you can always, if it's something from RNAO that is not, you know, outrageous about INs, you know, stick to INs, but then you can tweet that, because I think more and more, at the very least, RNAO does it. We do look for people, you know, that tweet, that are engaged, that know what's going on, that have the courage to say things. So use your judgment. Use your judgment, but at the very least follow so you know what's going on, right?
Thanks, Doris. So I think, Stepaline, you've got your audio on.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Stepaline Dionarine, and I am an international educated nurse. I've listened to all the comments for the past hour. And what I will recommend is the process hasn't changed. I've put that in the chat box. The process hasn't changed. And what I think is that when you come into a different country to practice, because I remember going, before I came to Canada, I went to another country to practice that doesn't speak, well, they speak English, but it's a second language, basically. And the first thing that I was told was, Stepaline, please learn some of the languages, because when a patient goes into labor, she reverts back to her original language. So even if she knows the English language very well, when she's in pain, she reverts back to her original language. So please learn some of that language enough so that you can interact with the patient when that happens. But at the other times, the interaction is fine. And I really took that, and I thought about it for a little while. And then when I came to Canada to practice, I remember that those words. And as I went through the whole process of getting registration, it hasn't changed. It really hasn't changed. The documents goes to the nursing council at your country that you came from. It comes to the CNO here in the province, because provinces do not sort of intermingle with provinces. They have their own CNOs. So and then you have to go through that process. They give you the opportunity, if you're an RN, to take the RPN exam without any getting any further documentation. They will look through your documentation, and 1 month later they will say you can take the RPN exam if you want to take that. Sometimes I think people have to do that because the RPN is a very well recognized nursing body within Canada. So if they say to take your RPN, yes, and you have all the knowledges and skills, passing the RPN will be a cinch. And you'll be right into the system in a year's time. You'll be right into the system, practicing at the side of RNs, looking at the system, knowing what's happening, really integrating into the system, so that when you go through your RN, you're there and you're being accepted as a nurse before. So I think there are many ways to kind of navigate this CNO problem, because it's been there a long time. So we now have to look at how we can navigate the system, because you can only control what you can control. So this is the thing I will recommend. I think someone recommended about long-term care homes. Yes, long-term care homes give you whacking a number of experience. It gives you medical, it gives you surgical, it gives you every part of experience when you work in a nursing home. You may not get maternal and child, but you get some experiences from the folks telling you about the grandkids and things like that. But the point is that you get that experience, and when you get that experience, it's so transferable. It's unreal. I am just telling you from a life experience. It's really, you transfer those skills, and those skills are major skills. I came as a midwifery sister from where I came from, the country. I came as a midwifery sister, so that was like a manager in Canada. But I knew the process I had to take to get there, so it didn't daunt. I wasn't daunted by the process, but the point of the process is to try for CNO to move the process, let people know exactly, what the process is, and not the issue of, the race and all of that kind of a thing. The issue of, what are your qualifications? Does your qualifications meet the requirements of the Canadian system? I know some people talk about the US, but that's the US system. So you're in a Canadian system. If you're in a Canadian system, you have to follow the Canadian system. If you get to the traffic light and it's red, you have to stop, you cannot go. So I think we have to use a lot of our energy really navigating how we can climb the ladder of that system without ourselves getting so frustrated to the end that we lose time in our practice area. And the other thing I said is, do some volunteer work. There's lots of healthcare organizations need volunteers, and they do recognize volunteers very well, like a professional volunteer. They really recognize your skills. And you, as a person who wants to get registered, you've got your eye on the prize. You're looking to see how nurses practice, how they integrate, that whole thing. So by the time you get your license, you're gone, and you will get back to the position as a head nurse or as a manager. Once you get your license, it will take you maybe a year or two to get back to a manager again. That's live experience I'm giving you there. So I think, and it took me 4 years.
Wow.
And I would add only one thing to those amazing comments, and is choose well, if you can, the work environment you will join. I was saying to Nancy Campbell, my colleagues know Nancy, she works in admin at RNAO, how fortunate I was. You truly could not understand what I was speaking when I went to Ann Arbor, Michigan. I tell you that. I could not understand patients well. They could not. And the manager of that unit, Caroline Emery, you always remember good people. Saw the expertise I had.
Yeah.
My colleagues there saw the expertise I had. And in no time, not only I knew my accent was better, but I was asked to become a manager. I was asked. I actually thought, are they bananas? I'm not even a resident in this country.
Yeah.
Choose the place. I'm saying this to Carla because Carla right now has 2 offers. I'm a reference and she may have 3 or 4. I don't know how many she plans to send our way. Choose the place you will work. Don't only, I know you want long-term care and I applaud you that you want long-term care. We need good people in long-term care and you are going to be a star in long-term care. I tell you because I know that, and so does Imagine that knows you. And so does Raulito that knows you. Choose carefully the place. Choose a place that they recognize you for who you are as a person and for your expertise. And a place that will not, in Spanish, ¿cómo se dice, Raúl? Cortar con serrucho. That will not cut the floor. How do you say it? Will not, trip you. But that will push you up, rather than try to, go for it. All of you.
And there was just a mention is that I was in maternal and child, well, in midwifery when I came. I was an RN and a midwife. And I wanted to get back into, sort of the midwifery sector. And I got back into maternity. So I got back as a manager, director, clinical educator, all those things in maternal and child. So you can get back where you want to get to, but you just have to have your eye on the prize. That's all I can say.
Thank you for the tips, Cephaline. It's great to hear those. Imogene, I'm wondering if I can call on you, maybe if you have an answer or someone else, but then also there's a question from Felicia, Imogene, that you might have an answer to. I also wanted to give you a chance to talk about what RNAO is doing. And then perhaps if there's time to see what other additional questions that we might we might not have answered yet. So the question, and I'll turn things over to you. See that, Imogene?
I see the question from Felicia. Yes. Okay. I'll answer that question. And then there's 3 comments, and then I want to just move to the policy slide. The qualifications that I have asked myself at NNAS, they're not necessarily Canadian, and someone else said a comment about NNAS. They are a Canadian organization, not for profit. They're located in Winnipeg, and the CEO is Gail Waxman, and she is a Canadian. The assessors may be American. They may not necessarily be registered nurses. And the way Gail talks about it is they have a cut and dried matrix and they are following the matrix. We need to follow up on that a little bit more. So let me make 3 particular comments. The first is about work environment, and Doris is absolutely right. And I did want to give a shout out to those organizations who have responded to RNAO, responded to our team of IENs from the Philippines who are waiting for their immigration and have made job offers, conducted interviews, and appear to be very supportive environments. But I too have said to every IEN, you are also interviewing the workplace. Keep that in mind. The second thing is, I want you all to know there are many areas of advocacy which we will be focusing on. There is a Canadian Council of Registered Nurse Regulators. It is a Canadian-wide group that every regulator in nursing belongs to. They have developed the NNAS, set up the NNAS, and they all use it. The sad thing is they all use it differently. They all have different requirements. And this is a clear area of advocacy because you can see, as you've all said, the confusion it causes. The third additional point is I am seeing this really as nursing's little secret or behind the IEN curtain. I've seen comments here from people who say, I had no idea it was that complex. And it is. And I have had, well, the sad privilege, I guess, of working with the IEN group from Pakistan and learning the complexities and the hurdles that these nurses and all of you from other countries have to overcome. So what else is RNAO doing? First of all, in terms of RNAO, what we do in relation to any policy initiatives we want changed is every election, provincial, federal, and even at times municipal, we put out an election platform, an RNAO election platform with key areas we are looking to have changed and become part of the political landscape, part of the healthcare context. And our platforms focus on nursing, they focus on the health system, social determinants of health, environmental determinants of health, and fiscal policy. In this year, our platform will address Ontario's nursing crisis. We have a major section related to IENs, related to expediting the 20,000 plus IENs so that they become registered as either RNs or RPNs in this province, and providing the ways and means to do that. And as Doris has said, we will leave no stone unturned in relation to finding the ways to make this faster, clearer, and less expensive. Also in our pre-budget submission, which we do certainly with the Ontario provincial budget that has just actually called for pre-budget submissions. Our submission this year focused on all of the issues that are in our provincial platform, in particular the nursing crisis. And there again, we requested specific funding to expedite the IEN registration process in this province, to enhance the nursing graduate guarantee so that it will be able to be expanded to incorporate the large numbers of IENs, and also to bring back the late career nurse initiative, including retired nurses, as Doris has said, so that they can be mentors to those who are new registrants or returning registrants, and that would include IENs. The other initiative we're looking at is urging the college to publicly report full IEN data to be available on their website. All of this started because the data have become aware to us. We've become aware of the data that is hidden in various reports and documents. The Fairness Commissioner report is where we found just hidden away in Table G of 14,633 registered nurses who've been, or IENs who've been in contact with the college at least once over the past year. So they would have a file open. We found also 6,315 IENs applied to the college in 2020. And we found that only 2,123 IENs were fully registered as RNs or RPNs. That's 10% of that number that is out there that we think is a conservative estimate. So these data have been hidden. We also know from sifting.
Imagine,
Yeah.
and in addition to that, hidden, and in addition to that, no one, including, okay, I'm not going to go there, have taken the time to poke more. Like, for example, we are asking how many of those 20,000 plus are waiting 1 year? How many are waiting 2 years? How many are waiting 4? How many are waiting 5, etc., etc.? And then a bucket of give us the reasons why they're waiting. Papers not in order, language issue, practice, like what are the issues? No one has poked, and if they have the information, we have been unable to receive that information, and we will go after it.
And it's very quietly hidden. I've now discovered in some of the strategic plans, in some of the KPIs, the college does have a KPI of a median of 6 months that they're saying for both RNs and RPNs who are IENs to become registered. It is now 3 years. I know they have data on every phase and how many days it takes, but that is somewhere hidden. And I have asked the college for information numerous times myself, only to be turned to obscure reports. The other things I did want to say is that there are a number of RNAO-led meetings going on, which Doris has alluded to. We have another one coming up with NNAS, and some of your comments I've noted down that are really important to ask and get clear, because you're very right. 95% at least of all applicants who are IENs come from the Philippines or India. So the NNAS should by now have very clear protocols for the various schools IENs come from, and it should take no time to assess the documents. Plus some of the other comments you've made. The other is, of course, meeting with the Fairness Commissioner, which Doris indicated we have done, and we've raised some critical issues, and really will continue to follow up with them. And then we will be meeting with the Human Rights Commission again to follow up further about how this can be such a drastic human rights issue. And I did want to just note for you that the Human Rights Commission, I've got there what their tagline, access is essential to success. Well, if you can't access your registration, it's hard to be successful as a registered nurse. They also indicate that they believe in transparency, fairness, objectivity, and impartiality. And that's exactly what we need in this issue. So trust us. We're following up with awareness raising, advocacy through social media, and then tackling this as well through policy.
Thank you, Irma-Jean, very much for answering some of the questions and talking about the variety of ways that we've been addressing and expediting the registration for internationally educated nurses. I see that it's 3:53, so there's just a little bit more time. Devinder had her hand up, and Rahim. So let's go to Devinder and then Rahim, and then kind of work towards some closing remarks. So Devinder, go ahead.
Hi, I just want to discuss what I faced when I came here as a nurse. I worked back home. I worked 5 years in a multi-specialty hospital, got all my skills, knowledge, and came here and struggled to get my RPN license here. And then after I thought that, okay, I will get my registered nurse RN. So what happened, I got registered with NNAS. And with what happened, it took me 1 year to get all the process done and get all the credentials done. And then what happened, it was only 1 month left and I didn't get back from NNES anything. And I called them to find out like what's happening. Did you get any report? And what happened? They said, we didn't get your documents from your registry from back home. So what happened is, like I said, now what I have to do? So they said you have to call them. And by the time I reached there and they have to send the documents, the registry got expired, because it takes the registration take only 1 year, and then after you have to reactivate your file with NNAS too. So I have to pay them again to activate my file. So that was a big hustle too. And money, because being IN nurses, I mean, immigrant here, you have not that much money and you're working hard here. So it was a bit of challenge. And now what they did, they said I'm not compatible to work as RN. So they send the report, and then now CNO sent that I have the competency gap. And now just because of that, even I had my studies back home, I have joined the university
You
here.
need to hear, you need to hear.
Who choose to make Ontario their home. They are eager to provide care to Ontarians who are our families and neighbors. Add your voice to RNAOs to make it happen. Join RNAO today. Membership fee, including...
Morgan talking about INs, the message of Morgan. How timely. Our president leaving a message to everybody about join us with the voice for INs. Sorry, I needed to let you hear, it was live.
No, that is wonderful though. Like somebody is speaking for us though. So, so that was a bigger hustle. And then the challenge we are facing, and now just because of the competency gap, I am doing my like the studies from university just to fill that gap to get my RN license here.
Thank you, Devinder. So it sounds really frustrating and also expensive. Thank you for sharing your story. Let's go to you, Rahim, and then maybe Doris, you can give some final closing remarks. So go ahead, Rahim.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak again. I would ask Hermogene if she could note out my point in her report too about systematic barriers which INs faces over here in Canada, especially in Ontario. You just mentioned about an organization called CARE. So CARE is an organization which helps INs to prepare and get their nursing license. And they help in many ways. So they connect you with mentors. They help you to give your touchstone exam. They prepare you for that. So it is really helpful organization. But you know, the most frustrating point is that if you are not a permanent resident or a citizen, you cannot access that resource. So just ask a nurse who has come here to do a master's or PhD as a student, or that is accompanying spouse of a student, or has come in any ways they have entered into the Canada. And yet, because of a systematic barrier that they are not a citizen or a permanent resident, they cannot use such an important resource, which is funded by government, to get IN into streamline as a nurses. So this should be highlighted at all levels that why a second-hand treatment for a student or a person who is on a spousal work permit and wants to get their registration, they don't have any support system available, which are there, but they can't access it just because they are temporary resident. That would be my comment.
Yeah, that's a good comment.
Thank you, Rahim. Seppaline, I think we have a few minutes, or well, not a few minutes, a few seconds for a final comment from you, and then Doris will close us off. So go ahead, Seppaline. Okay. I'm not sure what's, maybe you're having difficulty with your,
Hang on. Oh,
Oh,
okay.
So
Can you hear me
sorry,
now?
Susan,
Can you
I
hear
do
me
have
now?
an urgent, Susan, I have an urgent call at 4. They called before and I told them to call at 4. I absolutely will need to leave at 4.
okay, sure. So Seppaline, finish your sentence.
Maybe I just say goodbye
Go
to
ahead.
people and then Sapalin
Yeah,
comes.
go
because
ahead, please,
before now
Doris.
and
Yeah.
the phone will ring.
Yeah.
So colleagues, it was a privilege to have you. This is not the last time we will hear from you. Some of you, we are in touch all the time, but all of you, we will continue to lean on your experience to push the issues forward. Number one, with the process of registration. Number two, with the issue of employment. Number three, with the issue of equal opportunities. Number four, with your careers for the go forward, for those that want to do whatever you want to do. Practicing at the bedside or street side or home care side is magnificent. Every country I have been, that's where I have put a lot of effort, because practice is the power of nursing, I believe. And for those of you that want to then move into other positions of management, education, executive positions, research, etc., which supports outstanding practice. Nursing is a feast of opportunity. We always say that, and you have all the right in the world to choose your menu. You have all the right in the world to choose your menu. Don't let anyone else dictate that menu for you. Just go for it, prepare yourself, educate yourself, know everything that there is to know about the area where you want to focus, and go for it, because we will stand with you and cheer you up and help you. Take care. Thank you.
Okay, thank you everyone so much in our
I think
panelists.
Seppaline wanted to talk.
I think, okay, let's see if we can get you back on unmuted there, Seppaline, and then we'll say our final goodbyes. I'll try that one more time. Okay, perhaps Seppaline, if, oh,
Yeah, can you hear me?
yes, yes, great.
Okay. All right. So oh, what's going on here now? Ooh. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So what I want to say.
Oh.
Okay, what I want to say. Oh no. I'm not sure what's going on.
Okay, perhaps what you could do, Seppaline, is connect directly with Imogene and share some of your comments there. So make sure that.
Let me try one more time here and see what
Okay.
happens. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. So what I wanted to say, I'm an IEN myself, as I said before, and I am a proud member of RNAO for the last 30 years. And RNAO has helped me all the way through. I was introduced to RNAO way back when, and RNAO has helped me all the way in my career, you know, the pathway, the information they have, the education events, lots of opportunities in RNAO. Even if you're not a member, what you can do is find a member who is part of RNAO, and they can help you to lead you through some of the processes. But RNAO has been really helpful to me. Presently, I am the Policy and Political Executive Network Officer for the International Nurses Interest Group. And so we do a lot of, you know, information and sort of international things for nurses. What I would recommend is please keep the course. Do not give up. If you really want to be a nurse, really, you know, seek out someone who is very positive for a mentorship, and that mentor will take you through the process, and you will get to the other side, you know, a little bit effortlessly. That's what I want to say. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad we were able to hear your words of encouragement, Seppaline, and those connections. So if you haven't already, maybe you could just put your contact information in the chat box. And I think we'll bring this session to a close with thanking very much our panelists today for sharing their stories, all of you for your excellent comments in the chat box, some suggestions for making things better. And we'll continue striving to support you. And thank you, Raul, for your for facilitating the discussion, and Nurmagene for your expertise, and Doris always for your fierce advocacy. So thank you, everyone, and take good care.
Thank you.
And thank you, Susan.
Lulu.
Thank
Happy
you.
Valentine's Day.